Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got a heck of an episode. I'll admit it, I'm a little bit on a democracy high right now because we did just have, I think, what was a wildly successful protest downtown Lexington today, which we'll get into in a minute. But yeah, that's why I'm in a good mood, doing democracy with people who also care about the future of it. Pretty awesome. I highly recommend it. And we're going to cover a couple stories. We're going to talk about some bills that the governor should veto because it's veto break. So he needs to, give the legislature an excuse to go out on break, right? We're going to talk about some education fights that are happening right now, what it means to Kentucky. And then very, very, very thrilled to be joined. Pretty sure it's going to happen this week, by Senator Reggie Thomas, represents the 13th Senate District here in Lexington. So it should be a great show because we love Reggie. Love to hear what he has to say about his time in the legislature and how folks should get involved and hold them all accountable. And the great thing about Reggie Thomas, no matter how bleak the session, he usually has something positive that maybe slipped my attention about good things they did. So I'm looking forward to hearing his take on that. All right. But before we get into it, heck of a week to get big on democracy. We definitely need more time, more energy, more resources to do what we need to do. And I hope you'll join us. So, we are right now looking to increase our impact because now is the time for us to do that. There's a lot happening. It's really important that we connect the dots between the politicians in Frankfurt, what they're doing in Frankfurt, and then how it's impacting people's lives across our commonwealth. Obviously, also the federal fights that are happening right now are going to have a real toll on our commonwealth, and we need to tell those stories. We need to do it with as much kind of volume and as big a voice as possible, so your support can help us do that. Please do make a donation. We've got a wonderful and secure Act Blue website you can donate to. And I promise if you donate to us, we will not send you 25 all caps emails or texts making sure that you do it again and again and again. We're not that way. We're pretty modest about it all, pretty low key, but whatever you can do could help out quite a bit. So that's us. Plug away. Now let's check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are, what's your protest sign say today. So I'll start. I'm Aaron. I'm in Lexington. My protest sign literally said today, it said F Elon, which, if you look back, you're like, oh, maybe that says felon. No, it says F Elon. Some people see it and they go, oh, you got your spacing a little off here. Like, nope, it says F Elon. Anyway, you can read it a couple ways. I like it. I'm a fan of it. Anyway, all right. Very thrilled to have back in the co-host chair, Nate Orshan. Nate, how are you? You're muted. So I don't know how you're doing because you're muted. Yeah. You're gonna unmute? I hope you do. Just a little technical difficulties potentially right now. It does have. How about now?
Okay, check, test 1, 2. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little rusty. Got to get my Lodcast chops back. You asked how I'm doing? The answer is, things are grim, but I am delighted to be in the company of people who are fierce advocates and ready to do what it takes for the Commonwealth. So then I'm happy to be here. So in case you just tuned in, this is Nate Orshan coming live and direct from Frankfurt, actually South Frankfurt, just a stone's throw from the Capitol building and all the bad stuff going on there. So back to you. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, and I do have a sign. I didn't make it. But remember when Doug Price used to actually come in when he'd have a sign? He was like very principled about that. Like, no, I actually have Doug Price. We love you, Doug. Hope you're doing okay. So my sign would say, Governor Andy, don't you take no breaks during veto break. Get it? No breaks to break, no breaks. Thank you.
That's
I'll be here all week.
All week. That's
Yep.
not true. He will not be here all week. All right, so we've got him for another hour probably, so we should actually get to the stories we want to cover. All right, so we've got a few things we wanted to talk about. I think the first one is, so let's talk about the federal focus, our big update on our Andy Barr accountability campaign. This was fun. He was at the Commerce Lexington policy luncheon earlier today. If you listened last week, we told you about it, encouraged you to come out. It was during the workday, so I don't know if I know everyone couldn't make it out, but it felt like everyone was out there. It was amazing. We were outside demanding that Andy Barr stand up to Trump Musk's economy of, by, and for billionaires. There were literally hundreds of folks out there, hundreds of pissed off constituents showing up, showing out. We had great Lexington media coverage. So if folks want to, I think we had some image. There it is, Deborah Girth. Indivisible. If folks, folks don't know Deborah, you should know Deborah. She's been doing work with a little group, not a little group, a great group called Gathering for Democracy. They've been doing like postcards and things of that nature. Really nice affinity group that really cares much about our democracy. And so, she was the spokesperson and got lots of TV hits, throughout the Lexington media market for sure. We got to make sure we send those clips to Indivisible so they see it, and they might bundle it into a national story as well, because I think now that more and more of these events are happening because they're on break, Congress is, I believe, on break, should be around a bit this week and next, more of these opportunities to really hold them accountable. But it was a big turnout. It was like hundreds of folks showed up, and we were right there on High Street, right by the Rupp Arena. And Rupp Arena was kind of getting ready for some, NCAA basketball, which is happening there. So there's a fair amount of kind of busyness happening. Lots of folks driving, and it really was just a really great event. Lots of people honking in support. And thank you, Linda Gillison from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We appreciate the kudos for sure. But it was fun to do, and it's fun, if you haven't been to one of these, go out to the protest. It's just so nice to chat with other folks who are, also feeling a bit of existential dread for our democracy, right? People who want to do something important. And then, Andy Barr, of course, did not come by. He went directly into the event, but he was asked, because the media, talked to us, and then they went inside to talk to him. And he was like, well, this is democracy because people voted for Trump, and and so this is what he's doing, and this is what he ran on, was cutting our bureaucracy. So I think Andy Barr is not going to say anything against Donald Trump. I don't think he's inclined to do that, but I think as he lines up his Senate run, which sounds more and more like he's definitely going to do, he definitely wants Donald Trump's endorsement. He wants, he's not going to be like Massey and pick a fight with Donald Trump. He is going to be all in for Trump from here, between here and that election for sure. So, we didn't really expect him to come out against Doge. I would imagine that he would have said something about, unfortunate that the trade war is going to really hurt folks in Kentucky who make bourbon, right? I would hope that he would acknowledge that. Didn't seem like he wanted to. He was talking about how, the Trump economy is going to be great for Kentucky, which he's clearly, just lying. Anyway. It was a great event. I'm sorry that Nate wasn't there, but I got to hang out with Annabel, so that was pretty cool. All right. So any others? What do we want to cover? What do we want to cover here? I think you've got a story, Nate, going to bring us back to the state level.
Back to the state level, yeah, and just to touch on the Andy Barr thing. So it's not just the bourbon that is going to be heavily impacted by tariffs, but we have all this auto industry in the state. We've got in Georgetown, right, the great Toyota plant, and it hinges on getting supplies from international sources, from Mexico, from Canada, from elsewhere too, but you can't have a modern supply chain for these types of industrial organizations without stuff from outside the country. And just as soon as, anyone can think of it, we're going to start seeing tariffs on all these, components of cars, pushing up car prices, making it harder to sell cars, so on and so forth. I don't want to belabor it, but those tariffs are going to affect a lot of things, and it would be nice to have some Congress people care about that.
Sure.
But anyway, off that soapbox onto another one. So today's story comes from Kentucky Lantern, from the great reporter McKenna Horsley. And it's about, they call it, Kentucky Educators Push Back on Trump Administration's Threats to Cut Education Funding. What that's about is a press conference that our great Lieutenant Governor, Jacqueline Coleman, held today with a couple of women. Oh, there's a nice picture. A couple of moms who also have stories about how education cuts would affect their kids. But, she sort of weighed in today about the potential of federal education funding cuts to really screw with a lot of Kentucky students' lives. That's my term, not hers, but that's the point, right? Is that you take that money away and bad things happen. And our lieutenant governor is also a former teacher, although as my spouse Kit would say, you're never really a former teacher, right? It's kind of a lifetime calling and practice. And Lieutenant Governor Coleman sort of hammered home the fact that, quote, gutting federal education funding could hamstring services at Kentucky's public schools, unquote. That's true. And then she also shared a few metrics too. So, for example, she shared the fact that in Kentucky, we have 926 schools getting Title I funding. What's that? That's federal dollars that these school districts get in order to help students that come from low-income families. Basically, I should be using quote marks there because I'm just reading off the article. But, that 926, that's a lot of schools with low-income students that would be just completely undermined by losing that funding. What else? What else could we lose? Well, there's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, cleverly called IDEA. And what does it do? It supports over 100,000, like 114,000 students with disabilities programs and services. That could be cut too. I think Trump and his folks have no compunction about that. Lieutenant Governor Coleman also shared that last year, Kentucky students, college students, got more than $370 million in federal Pell Grants. These are grants that go to students who really need the money. So they're also kind of low income or just really need that support. That could be gone too, right? So we've got funding for low-income students. We've got funding for students with disabilities. We've got funding for lower-income college students, aspiring college students. Gone potentially. Could Kentucky make up that difference if all the federal money got deleted and Trump and his evil Doge crew have their way? I mean, yeah, in theory, but we'd have to do something that the majority Republican General Assembly would never do: set up some responsible taxation for education. So, the odds of that, I think what those are. It's not very high. So yeah, we need to fight, and I'm glad that our Lieutenant Governor Coleman is fighting as well to at least make Kentuckians know what exactly is on the line with Department of Education cuts. How about you, Aaron? What do you think? You have some students in your family. Oh, I don't see Aaron. He may have dropped out. Aaron does indeed have two, a high school student and a middle school student. And I know that the prospect of them losing support, if they needed it, would be close to home. I don't think that necessarily his family is in that same boat, but
I don't. Yeah,
there you are.
Sorry about that, Nate. I got a phone call from Senator Thomas, and
Oh,
so there was a little confusion about how he was doing this. So I need to email him a link right now, which I'm gonna or text him a link right now so he
oh
can join.
yeah.
So
Well, I
yeah,
can. That's good. You're being very responsible and helping a senator,
I
helping
think
a senator out, right?
I
They keep rambling.
I think it's important that he get this because we do want
It
him to join us.
is. It is.
He is the guest of honor. So let me go ahead and shoot this over to him,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I
but
will
by
maybe.
all means, you know. Oh, what was the bill? We had some version of Doge coming through a bill recently as well. It was like the Kentucky, you know,
Yeah, Kentucky Doge,
or
basically.
yeah, and really, like, like this is what you want to emulate, of
Uh,
all the things.
I mean, and and the ridiculous thing, I think that Kentucky Doge was like basically the things the auditor already does. Like they didn't give him new
Oh
powers
yeah.
or anything like that. You're like just they
Well,
wanted to
they
jump on that, that train.
they could invite some very wealthy Kentuckian, like Kelly Craft, to be sort of an unofficial, sort of wrecking ball. Like, here you go. We're going to give you the keys, and you just start, demolishing things, right?
So,
Because we're
I think that story is an important one. I think the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy has some pretty good analysis of kind of how much money comes to our state, right? You hit some good important points. But if you are interested in looking to see what actually your local school district, gets from the federal government, I think you should. This is important information, and it's and what percentage of their education spending came from the federal government. And for some of these, rural school districts and others, it's a very high percentage. So yeah, really, definitely something that, we should all be very aware of. I was glad to see the lieutenant governor jumping out on that one. And I think, states, we need to like educate our constituents about what is actually happening because of this federal, budget conversation and just this irresponsible budgeting that's going to have a real impact. So thanks
that's
for
right.
covering that important story, Nate.
Yeah, yeah. Meta education, if you will, education about education.
Exactly. So I think the senator will be joining us shortly.
Oh,
But I did want to just jump in on the very important fact that Nate touched on with his with his sign, that it's veto break, right? So what does that mean? If you're not super familiar, the way the Kentucky legislature works, there's a few different things that could happen where if the governor can sign, and there's like a timeline to sign bills, and bills can become law without his signature if he just leaves them alone. But then he could also veto them, and if he vetoes them, the legislature can override them, right? Because it's just a simple majority for the legislature to override Governor Andy Beshear's veto, or whoever the governor is at the time, right? So really, kind of, what's the point of a veto, I wonder, right? When it's just a simple majority, because it takes a simple majority to pass the bill. So it doesn't really give him a ton of power, but the timing thing really does make it interesting. So, if he vetoes something and they're not around to override the veto, then that veto is going to stand, right? So they want to make sure they get all their priority bills passed and then give him time to veto them. He has so many days with which to veto them. Then they come back, and so they schedule their session to come back and to be able to overturn any vetoes, right? So they're in this break right now. They call it the veto break. But what we want you to do, dear listener, is pay attention to a few of these bills that we think are horrible and they should be vetoed. We're going to call Governor Beshear right now and urge him to veto these bills. The first one, I think it's gotten a fair amount of attention, is HB 495, which would basically overturned the governor's executive order, which outlawed conversion therapy. And so conversion therapy, if folks are not familiar, horrible, like kind of basically pray the gay away type approach. It's not real therapy. It's thought of to be very very harmful to people. It's not legit, but there's, conservative right-wing Christians who think that, who still think it's a sign of mental illness to be gay. So this is their attempts to deal with that through conversion therapy. Really horrible. And this bill, overturned the governor's executive order, which banned conversion therapy. So brings it back and protects conversion therapists, who do damage to their patients. So patients couldn't come back and hold them accountable. That's HB 495. Also, SB 89, we've talked about a lot on this show, and that's the dirty water bill. That's the giving the coal industry whatever they want so they can pollute our waterways, our groundwater, and it really is a problem. It's like basically would give Kentucky the weakest water protections in the nation, because this is going above and beyond whatever the EPA does. It's lowering the floor very significantly, really puts our waterways at risk, our groundwater at risk, our well water at risk, and I think it's a horrible idea. That we should, the governor should absolutely veto that bill. And then HB4 got a lot of attention as well. This is the one that would outlaw DEI programs. I saw some footage of the local chair of the NAACP here in Lexington speaking very eloquently about the importance of DEI programs. They've been vilified, they've been made the victim, or they've been made the villain. And no, they're just an attempt to deal with historic wrongs. So HB4 is certainly something that the governor should veto as well. So we encourage everyone to call Andy, urge him to veto these bills. It's 502-564-2611. So not in the legislative comment line. It's a 502 number, 502-564-2611. You'll call the governor's office. You'll encourage him to veto those bills. We'll have those in our tracker, and we can put it in the show notes so you have the numbers at your disposal when you make the phone call, because I think they're just open during normal business hours, so they're not open right now. But yeah, Nate, any thoughts about those bills?
Hate them. Oh man, the conversion therapy one is especially odious to me, just because of the double. It traumatizes kids, because it's usually youth that are hauled into these would-be ersatz therapists' offices, trying to change them. And so, number one, it traumatizes them, right, because of all this horrible stigma that's piled on them, and then it doesn't even work. Conversion therapy does on top of that. So it's just gratuitous assault on kids' psyches. And, it's like trying to get it, oh, my child is left-handed, I have to turn them right-handed. This is actually, I knew a guy once who was in his 90s who started out left-handed, and he sort of had to become right-handed because, like, the nuns at school, that kind of thing. So it's awful. Anyway, blah, blah.
Hopefully at some point, we'll look back and know, everyone will know, right? It seems like most people know now, but not the Kentucky GOP. They do not know that. No. All right, so we're really super thrilled to be joined now by Senator Reggie Thomas, longtime friend of the show, really one of the best, legislators back there in Frankfort. Always so glad to have him fighting for our values, and strategically engaging with that Kentucky GOP. Senator Thomas, hello. How are you, sir?
Well, and I'm doing fine. First of all, let me apologize, because I was supposed to be on your show last week, and unexpectedly, well, maybe not so unexpectedly, session ran very long. And we actually had some very long days all last week. So I apologize for missing your show last week, but I'm here tonight, and I'm glad to be on your show. It's good to see you again.
So glad you could join us. And yes, I was getting the email updates from your assistants. Oh, they're going out. Nope, they're not going out. They're staying in. It was sound like a few long nights for you. So we appreciate the work you're putting in, the hours you're putting in. You heard me just rattle off a few bills that we hope the governor will veto. What's your assessment? How's the session proceeded?
Well, I think you highlighted two of the four that I would say were the worst bills. I was backstage. I was backstage for a little bit of your previous segment, so I don't know if you talked about the bill that allowed 18-year-olds to carry concealed guns. I have said publicly that I thought that was, of all bad bills we've passed, I thought that was the worst. Because that is going to really threaten all the good work we've done in some cities like my city of Lexington to reduce the murder rate substantially. Having these 18-year-olds who are just not mature enough to handle a gun, carry it concealed, be able to carry it to parks, to restaurants, to parties. I mean, I just think we're just asking for an increase in our death rate, and I just don't understand how the legislature can see that that's beneficial to the public. I think that's a horrible bill. And then really the last bill that we passed in the Senate under cover of darkness, the Medicaid bill, that really weakened Medicaid eligibility to over 1 million Kentuckians. Your viewers should know that in excess of 1.4 million Kentuckians rely on Medicaid as their primary health care coverage. And the actions we took to weaken their eligibility, make it tougher for them to apply. And the worst thing we did was to say that whatever the federal government decides to do with Medicaid in the future, we will honor that. It used to be that Kentucky would have more stringent protections and provide more care than the federal government. Well, not now. If the Trump administration decides tomorrow that we're not going to cover cancer screenings, so will Kentucky. If the Trump administration decides tomorrow, well, we're not going to do mammograms, so will Kentucky. I mean, it's a horrible bill, and to do it at the very last minute, late at night on a Friday night, I just think it's not a good look for our legislature.
No, for sure. HB 695, I think, and then SB 75 was the concealed carry one that was so dumb. And those both passed both chambers?
I believe they both have passed both chambers. Yes.
Yeah. So definitely good ones to urge the governor to veto as well. As we said before, it's the veto break. You might as well take advantage of it. Get these bills off your desk with a. Do you veto them with a red pen? Is that how that works? You sign them with a black pen? I don't know.
I don't know. I think as long as the governor signs it, I don't think. Yeah.
I love the veto process because he gets to write out why he's vetoing it. Right. Now, that's always pretty informative, and you get a good sense of his values as a politician.
That's true.
True. Yeah. So I hope to read a few of those, at least 4, maybe 6. I don't know. Then I think Nate, you've got a question for the senator, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I had sort of a almost selfish question. So. This is kind of a Kentucky civics housekeeping question, if you will. So when you get messages from voters about bills through the legislative message line, do you get separate lists, for one for your constituents and one from non-constituents? And
I don't, Nate, and my reason is very straightforward. Once I get elected, I'm here to serve Kentuckians. It doesn't matter whether they're D or R. In my mind, it doesn't matter whether they live in Fayette County, outside Fayette County. My vote applies to everyone in the state. So anyone in the state is free to contact me or welcome me. So no, I do not separate out my emails by whether they live in Fayette County or whether they don't.
Awesome. Yeah, because I've been doing a lot of the reason I ask is that I've been doing a lot of calling recently and just saying, okay, send this to all the House. Okay, send this to all the Senate. And, I walk away sort of patting myself on the back about, I got my message through to everybody. But it's not really clear to me whether indeed everyone is getting my oppose or support, or whether, only my own legislators are really paying attention. So it's nice to hear that you do.
Well, I do, but let me share with you, Nate, and I will say this. I think most legislators, when they see those shotgun approach emails to everyone, we don't pay attention to them. My advice to anyone who wants to contact their legislator or any legislator is to make it legislator specific. I think if you do it to all legislators, the chances are very, very high that no one will pay attention to it. I mean, yeah, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I think it's always better to target your emails to specific legislators.
So, on the email front, that totally makes sense. But on the phone calls, like the legislative comment line, how do those show up? Like, is that do you get a tally? What do they give to you? How do you know how many phone calls?
They used to come in green slips. We don't do green slips anymore. You just get a list of phone calls, and you respond as needed. What I do, Aaron, generally now is that if I get a phone call, if it's someone that I know, or someone that I've had come visit me, then I will respond. I try to spend at least a portion of my week returning phone calls to people on again with people I know, or they have something that they want to add to an important bill or important piece of legislation. I can't say I won't say I return everybody's phone call. I just don't have the time to do that now. I do respond to everybody's emails, but I don't respond to everybody's phone calls.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know we've encouraged people to put a lot of phone calls in. I think a lot of people have put in a lot of calls. I tell you that the legislative comment line really is, I think, a fantastic service that the legislature, or the state provides for folks to be engaged with that process. And we always encourage people to take advantage of it.
Aaron, since you're on this point, I do want to say something. I think the best advice you can give your listeners is to have them come down to Frankfort. I think nothing gets a legislator's attention quicker and faster, has more of an immediate impact than your face-to-face visit with that legislator. Now, if they don't deny you a visit, then I would ask for a visit again and again, because everyone has a right to the presence at the Capitol and at the legislative annex. And everyone should take every opportunity to come meet with a legislator and at least express your opinion. When I have people come into my office, I always applaud them for doing that, because that's their right. We are a democratic nation. We live in a democratic society, and people have that right to have their voice heard and listened to by their legislators.
As of this taping, yes, we are still a democratic nation. So yeah, that's a good point. And I was going to go down with Moms Demand Action. Kathy and her team was putting together a lobby day and wanted to go and meet up with, and say, like, can we set up meetings for you with your representatives? And I'm like, sure. But Vanessa Grossel, refused to meet with us, and then Senator Elkins also refused to meet with us. And didn't want to hear what we had to say, even though I'm a constituent. I'll be honest, I didn't vote for either of them, but it shouldn't matter, right? I'm still a constituent.
It should not matter. When someone comes to my office, Aaron, and wants to talk about a particular bill or a particular issue or a particular policy matter, I don't ask whether they voted for me or not. I mean, once I'm elected, Aaron, that's irrelevant. My job is to serve. So, Aaron, I will tell you tonight on air that if I were you, I would again contact Representative Grossel. I would again contact Senator Elkins and ask again for a meeting. You are a constituent. I mean, they represent you, Aaron.
Yeah. So far, not so well. I've not been impressed with their representation, but I'm a bit of a critic, I suppose. But I will say, because Senator Elkins did meet with us like last year for that same lobby day, and I was really impressed with his engagement, and he was thinking through what we were talking. We're talking about the CAR bill, the Crisis Aversion and Rights Retention Act,
right.
And he had some, I think, he saw some benefits and some positive elements of that bill and had some concerns about others, but it was a good exchange. He was very thoughtful about it, right? So I appreciate that, but I really don't appreciate not being given any time, right? When we're like, hey, we're going to be here all day. Can you give us 15 minutes of your time? And they're like, I just can't. I'm sorry.
Well, I enjoy working with Senator Greg Elk because I have nothing but good things to say about him. And he and I get along well.
Yeah, he seems like a just genuinely a nice guy, right? I prefer he not be my representative or my senator. I'd prefer somebody, with a D by their name, but otherwise, all right. So, how have you? You always find a ray of hope. I always appreciate that you find like positive things that are happening in the General Assembly that might have slipped my attention, my cynical read on things. Tell me, how's the session been? What have you found, opportunities to work across the aisle, or things that you've seen from from within your own caucus even that you're excited about? How are things?
Well, Aaron, let me tell you 3 or 4 good things I think we did, and maybe 1 or 2 you might disagree with me on, but that's fair. That's what public discourse is all about. I think the best thing we did, Aaron, this year as a legislature was to take away cell phones from high school students or from public school students. I'll just broaden that. Cell phones have really now really deterred and discouraged education and learning in the classroom, and even more importantly, the give and take and the discourse between teacher and student. And everything I've read that talks about schools that have taken cell phones away from students have seen a significant increase in student engagement, student achievement, and at the same time, a lessening or decline in matters of bullying, harassment, intimidation, mental health issues, suicide. And I'm glad Kentucky has decided to do that. I think that's the best item of legislation we've done this year. You want to comment on that, or you just want me to continue?
I will say this: our producer, I don't know if you're familiar with Annabel Nagel. She's not old. So if we all of a sudden lose this interaction, this interview, we'll know that the producer probably doesn't agree with you. But I think that generally I'm a big fan, of not having the students have the cell phones in the classroom for sure. I think it's a real a distraction, and as you said, like I know that social media is not generally great for kids who are in development. I think it seems like online bullying is a real thing, but Annabelle's concerned about safety concerns, and that maybe if there's a school shooting, you should have your phone with you. Which
well, we do carve out exceptions like that in the legislation, but again, I think that's the best item of legislation that we passed.
Oh, and then we lost him. I guess it was Annabelle.
Annabelle strikes.
We lost you for just a second, Senator Thomas.
Well, I got a phone call. I had to turn it off.
Oh, okay. I was sure that Annabelle had gotten rid of you, but no. All right, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I'm with you. What else?
The second thing, Aaron, is that we have now adopted a 3 strikes and you're out policy toward domestic violence offenders. Our recent history about domestic violence has not been good. We have a domestic violence statute on the books, and we have domestic violence orders, but they have not been uniformly enforced. And some courts are more lax than others. We have passed a law now, Aaron, that stops that. We say that if you've been given a domestic violence order, and on 3 different occasions you violate that order, and it can be to 3 different women. So it doesn't have to be specific to a particular woman, or man too. I mean, I'm not trying to be. I want to be gender neutral here, because men can be subjected to domestic violence, although it's primarily women. Then on your third violation of a domestic violence of any domestic violence order, or engagement in domestic violence, Aaron, then you're going to be slapped with a felony, and you're going to go to prison. So we have really tightened up the law regarding domestic violence, and you do it once, that should be less than enough. You do it again, we're going to penalize you in harsher terms. You do it a second time, Again, you got a misdemeanor. You do it third time, Aaron, you got a felony.
Yeah. Well, I think, in those situations, it's a repeat offender of that type is really super dangerous for sure. And, I'm not like, a huge law and order. That's not my number one priority, is seeking punishment and retribution. But this definitely seems like a public safety issue that, is worthy of consideration and leadership. So I've got no concerns there for sure.
Right. And then I'll just mention one more briefly, Aaron, and this is also in the education realm. What we've done is that we have really eliminated and reduced a lot of the paperwork requirements, reporting requirements that we impose on school teachers. We're now getting to a point which I believe we should have been a long time ago. It's giving teachers more freedom and flexibility to teach and not just be paper pushers. So we passed a law to do just that. I'm really pleased by that.
That seems great. Obviously, educators have a lot on their, on their plate. They've got to manage a lot of things throughout the course of a day. They don't have a lot of time to themselves and to, their ability to like grade. They don't have their, they just have their schedules seem way more compressed and, managed than I was ever aware they were when I was a student, for sure. It just seems like, hearing from educators what they've got to do throughout the course of a day, it just seems like a lot. So yeah, if there's less paperwork for them to be able to do their job, that sounds like a win for sure.
Right. So those are some of the good things I think we've done, Aaron, this session.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you sharing those with us, because I'll be honest, I had not heard about all of those, so I appreciate you bringing your perspective. One thing that we've got a good bill that we've been very focused on that allows caregivers to utilize absentee voting when the folks they're caring for are able to.
I've heard about that, but I've not read it, but I've heard about that bill.
Yeah, so it got rolled into HB 684. Which I think apparently it's passed both the House and the Senate. So hopefully that's one that the governor does not veto. But we're pretty proud of that one, HB 684. We're hoping that it becomes law. And we'd be very excited to add that to your list of good things that happen through this general assembly.
Well, I will certainly add that. Who's the bill sponsor on that? May I ask?
You may, and I will not tell you because I do not know. But we can look it up, and I'll shoot you a text on that one. So, but this is when Adam Moore was, looking to help expand the early voting on the House side initially, and he had some ideas, and he got it rolled into another bill, I think, that a Republican was sponsoring, because it tends to be how that stuff has to work. So yeah, I'm not sure about the full thing, but I'll look that up and figure out who we.
Adam has done an outstanding job in his freshman year as a legislator. I mean, I'm not in the Senate, but we do run across each other from time to time, and I've heard a lot of good things about him from other House members.
It does seem like he's getting things done, which, for a freshman Democrat can kind of be hard, right?
Yeah.
Well, how about you? What are your thoughts about, kind of next steps? I don't know if you know this, but it seems very, very likely the 6th district is going to be open. I know that in the past you have run for that office. Any thoughts about going to D.C., Senator Thomas?
No, Aaron. I can that very quickly. There are some excellent candidates out there. I'm not going to name any names, but I definitely am going to be involved in efforts to find a really good candidate who can run in that race, because I think that seat is still a winnable seat for a Democrat. I know there's some Democrats who don't think that way. I would disagree with that, and times now really do call for sensible, level-headed, common sense people to take the helm and go to Washington. And we here in Central Kentucky need a Democratic representative who can do just that, and not go up there and be another rubber stamp for Donald Trump and his administration. That's frightening at this point. That's just not politics. That's dangerous for our democracy.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think you're 100% accurate right there. I hope that the electorate of the 6th district agrees with you. I will not say it's unwinnable. I think it is a tough seat to win. I think in the midterm, if there's any time to win it, that's probably it. My hunch is that Donald Trump is not going to be terribly popular in 2 years, a year and a half, because I think of how he's running this country and what we're seeing in terms of the trade wars and the chaos and the corruption and the government of by and for billionaires, I don't think really resonates with average workers and voters. So I hope that this is a race that, is going to be super competitive and a Democrat can win. But, you're right. It comes to like having the right candidate for sure.
You got to have the right candidate.
Yeah, and I know you've done a lot of candidate recruitment for the Senate. That's kind of one of your roles, I think, as a Senate.
That's right. The caucus chair it is, and yes, I'm going to get started on that as soon as this session is over.
Nice. Well, we appreciate your work on all levels. Anything else you think our viewers should know about, folks who are concerned and active and want to make sure that whatever happens in Frankfurt, it's for the best of our Commonwealth? How should people be spending their time during this veto break? What should we be paying attention to?
Well, and I think it's time now to stay active. The session is almost over, but really, there's a lot more to be done after the session is over. And I'm going to be working with different groups, some of the constituent groups you name, like Moms Demand Action. And we've got a lot of work to do, a lot of activities to be a part of, to engage the public. Like I said, with respect to Moms Demand Action, this bill that's going to allow 18-year-olds to carry concealed, Aaron, is going to have horrible consequences for this state, and we've got to do a better we've not better job, but we've got to do a continuous job of seeking more appropriate, more level-headed approach to gun usage in this state.
No, for sure. It seems like that car bill, need to find some Republican support for that one. It just seems like Definitely. Such a sensible step. And I think, SB 75 was such a bad idea. Right. And appreciate your leadership in that.
And let me say this, Aaron, since you do come to Frankfurt, stop by my office sometime. Come spend some time with me and see what I do as a senator.
I would be honored to spend time with you, Senator.
I'll be glad to give you some insight into what my day is like when I'm there in session.
Excellent. Just so you know, though, I will not be a candidate. I will not. I run from office, not for office. I appreciate.
But Aaron, let me close with this. I know I'm running out of time, but let me say this, and I mean this with all sincerity from my heart. If good people don't run for office, Aaron, then bad people surely will and win, and will be worse off in society. We need good people to run for office.
We do. 100%. And I concur. And I think you did a wonderful job of candidate recruitment. And the folks that ran, they were doing it for the right reasons. They were, I think, really sensible, common sense folks. And they didn't win in these districts because we have been so gerrymandered. It is awfully tough to pick up any of these Senate districts really right now.
Well, we've got to play with the hand we're dealt, Aaron, and so that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely, yes. I know, but we need a bit of a sea change out there, just I think to see some different outcomes. We're going to need to make some structural changes about how people understand the Democratic Party, about how people understand, what our political system is all about and who's actually fighting for them. But it's a slow and arduous process. And I don't dispute that good candidates are really important to move that process further along the road and where it needs to go. But Senator, you are such a delight and such a just absolute asset to Lexington, to our Commonwealth. And I always appreciate you coming on and bringing your perspective and your information. You're always just so informative about what's going on in Frankfurt. And so we appreciate you so much.
Well, Aaron, you play a very vital role in our democracy. I mean, the freedom of the press is in the First Amendment for a reason, because we understand that people need to hear all sides of what's going on in the news. and not just some packaged, controverted version of the news.
Well, we try to be fair. We're not nonpartisan. I will say this: we definitely have a perspective, but I like to bring on experts and folks who really know what's going on to share their perspective, so people learn a little bit for sure.
Well, at least, Aaron, your version of the news is accurate. It's not distorted. It's not falsified. No, it's honest, and I appreciate that.
Well, we stand on the shoulders of fantastic resources out there. So, we lean heavily onto like folks like, Kentucky Lantern. They do such an amazing job. We use a lot of reporting from the Herald Leader as well, because they're still out there, and I pay through the nose for that access, but I will do that. And then, of course, public radio throughout the state does a really good job as well. So, we're not doing a lot of original reporting, but we utilize, trustworthy sources to bring information to folks. And we always have links in our show notes where that stuff came from. So, Senator Thomas, you're just, again, huge resource for this region. Thank you for all the work you do for Central Kentucky and for the
Okay. All right. And I look forward to seeing you in the near future, Aaron.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, sir.
Okay, then. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. So we are excited to come close out with a final call to action. But so glad that Senator Thomas took time out of his busy schedule. It was nice to have him sitting down at a table as opposed to
walking.
I think is what we had him after one late night at the session. He's like, I got to get some food. And so
Senators got to eat.
Awesome. So what do we got next? I don't think we planned this terribly well. What's next up? We got to do a call to action.
Yeah. Is that not the People's Town Hall?
That's what it is.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Happening.
Okay.
And this one is exciting because folks, know there's a big indivisible movement right now for people to do town halls, to show up at town halls. Unfortunately, Andy Barr has not made himself available. So Gathering Democracy, which is a wonderful group of activists, has pulled together the People's Town Hall. It's at the Kentucky Theater. It's on Saturday at 10 a.m., I think for like an hour and a half or so. I talked to some of the organizers at today's protest. Some of the organizers for this event, they've got a really good idea about how they're going to kind of elevate people's stories to like make them as powerful as possible so people understand what's at stake about these federal decisions that really just seem to be going off the rails right now. So I hope people can RSVP, head on down to the Kentucky Theater, and share your perspective and learn, I think, about some great stuff that's happening. So yeah.
And tell Representative Congressman Barr to show up too.
Absolutely. Call that guy's office. Say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing that you can't show up at Saturday at 10 o'clock? It's like, it's not church. There's not a conflict there. You're not in DC making votes. So come on down and talk to your constituents, sir.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what you should say. I'll call that. I'll call it.
Call him.
Call him. All right. I think that's what we're doing. I think that's our show, huh?
And it's a wrap.
Can you close us out, sir?
Can I ever? Well, and I'll just say this has been a lot of fun. What an honor to be joining you today and to be able to sort of bask in the glow that is Senator Reggie Thomas.
Absolutely.
So I will let you know that Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, that's known as CAVE. And we are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Please join us next week. Our 203rd episode, woot woot, will be joined by somebody great, most likely. Production of this episode 202, was by Annabel Nagel. Nate Orshan, that's me, wrote and performed our theme song. You can find more information and music at my website. That's natosongs.com. and head there to hear my newest song. And if you finally miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, both very admirable platforms, the audio podcast and our show notes are available on Apple, on Google, on Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. And we'll end up by reminding you that logo and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. Courage.